Hi. I want to talk today about the truth. They say that truth is stranger than fiction. They say that it will set you free. Also that it is rarely pure. But what is truth? What does truth mean to us? Well, by definition, truth is a state of being in accordance with reality. It is what is real. It is the grounds that we stand on, and it is the foundation of everything that we build. And when we look back in history, we start to see that shared truths were the things that created major social moments across time. That actually those shared truths were the foundations for everything that we have built. In the 1930s, the shared truth around the importance of education is what helped us to create public school systems around the world. And then in the early 1900s, the shared truth around the self-determination of nations was what helped colonies to then break from the colonizers and find independence. In the 1940s and 1950s, a shared truth around the nuclear family is what helped us define roles, set expectations, and create stability in our lives after the chaos of World War II. And then in the 2000s and 2010s, a shared truth that we all deserve love is what helped us to rally around gay marriage and then create legalization in Canada in 2005. But truth is not just a social construct. Truth is a survival mechanism. When our ancestors found a new plant, they needed to understand, was that plant poisonous or was it nutritious? The truth was a difference between life and death for them. Truth is what helped them to understand what was real and reliable. It helped them to understand what the path forward looked like. And it helped them to think through and adapt to what was coming next, to endure and to evolve. Today, we still seek truth in order to survive. In fact, truth is what helps us in times of uncertainty. This phenomenon is called cognitive closure. It's a psychological word in that world of psychology. It was coined by a man named Ari Kruglansky. He's a social psychologist. And it is described as the human desire for clear, definite answers to eliminate the distress of the unknown. The truth is what helps us to move forward. It is our everything. It is how we make decisions. It is how we relate to one another. It is how we find our futures. And yet, as important as the truth is today, as important as it is to our societies, and as important it is to us personally, the truth we are witnessing is eroding. It's a little scary to look at, but today, the meaning of truth is changing. It is harder for us than ever to agree on shared truths that we want to push the world forward. And singular truths are harder to hold in our minds than ever. And that is a bit scary. But I believe that there is something rising in its ashes. I believe that today there is something that brands can be a large part of that can help our society. My name is Chris Konya. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at SYLVAIN. And today I would like to talk to you about the erosion of truth and brands' role in our collective stabilization. Before we do that, first I want to let you know that SYLVAIN is a brand and innovation consultancy. We work in the disciplines of strategy and design. Our largest partnerships today are with companies like, we've got Google, Nike, Amazon, Amex, the New York Times, the NBA. But if you want to talk to me more about that, please come up and chat with me afterward. First, I want to talk to you more about the truth. So it seems kind of silly, but for a long time, we have said that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. But today, experts can't seem to agree on that. The hair of the dog doesn't actually cure a hangover. In fact, it might be the worst thing that you can do. Money can buy you happiness. Wait, no, money can't buy you happiness. I don't know anymore. Perhaps on a more serious note, it was once thought that hustle culture was very core and key to business success. But actually, recent research shows that that kind of grinding can create long-term drop-offs in terms of productivity as well as profitability. Did you know that blue zones are actually being questioned now due to faulty record keeping. And we once thought that people were either right-brained or left-brained thinkers. In fact, many of us chose career paths due to that idea. We even identified ourselves and understood how creative we were or thought about our own identities based on this idea of being a right-brained or a left-brained thinker. But today, modern neuroscience is telling us that actually the two hemispheres of our brains work in a highly interconnected way, and such that they support each other and actually require that support in order to function. Beyond these, the debunking of these commonly held beliefs, there is a more serious erosion of truth happening today. One that is affecting our economies, that is affecting our global relations, and that is affecting our local communities. The erosion of truth today is being accelerated by the very technology that is meant to give us limitless access to the facts. Today, we are being distracted by technology. We are gaining an onslaught, a fire hose of information that includes misinformation, AI slop, brain rot. It is so distracting and actually so hard to sift through that it's more likely that we will find synthetic truths than real ones, which becomes more concerning when we realize that actually those synthetic truths travel faster than real truth. The MIT Sloan School of Management found that falsehood diffuses significantly faster, further, deeper, and more broadly than the truth in all categories of information, and in many cases by an order of magnitude. In addition, our brains are actually predisposed, we're cognitively predisposed to believe things that we see more frequently. So whether a fact or fiction, when you see something over and over and over again, your brain will automatically believe that it is true. This is a phenomenon called the illusory truth effect. It was founded in 1977, but it became most popular in terms of research and study in the 2010s during the rise of social media. Not only does technology distract us from the truth, but it's also sequestering us from the truth. So algorithmic echo chambers are creating these bespoke truths that are the opposite of the shared truths that I had been sharing with you earlier. And that's all kind of fine when my feed is all cottagecore and yours is circus core. But what happens when I start going down the skinny talk rabbit hole and I start harming myself? Or what happens when I start going down the trad wife side of the internet and I start thinking that maybe women shouldn't work or that we shouldn't vote? What happens when someone is casually scrolling through political content, starting to get into then a little bit of conspiracy content, and eventually getting into extremist ideas? Did you know that from 2005 to 2016, social media use was a major factor for the radicalization of over 50% of individuals who are members of extremist groups? Now, I probably haven't told you anything new that you haven't thought before, that you didn't know deep down inside some way or another. I'm not here to beat a dead horse. I'm here to shed light on a new path forward, to see how we are going and where we will go. Because I believe that we are traversing new territory, that there is a new truth rising, and we are exploring a gray space between fact and reality. Because as Nietzsche said, there are no facts, there are only interpretations. Today, we are experiencing a cultural shift. We are moving away from black and white certainty toward ambiguity. We are more open to narratives that are told from the villain's perspective than ever. And we're actually more interested in morally complex superheroes than we were before. With Cowboy Carter, Beyoncé both celebrated country music and also questioned its white roots, saying that nothing is static, nothing is rigid. The world is changing over time. Everything Everywhere All at Once also challenged the genres of comedy, of drama, of science fiction, and said there is no one way to make a movie. Mel Robbins, in his runaway success, The Let Them Theory, asks us and encourages us to please stop trying to control others' behaviors and perceptions, and instead to surrender the need for one singular narrative, He is asking us to embrace the idea that everyone has their own truth, one that is built from our own perceptions, our own experiences, and our own emotions. And it's not just the world that we're seeing this way. It's actually ourselves. There is no singular path in life anymore. There is no one way to live. There's no one way to be a partner or to be a professional. Even motherhood, which was largely defined by culture and by religion in the past, motherhood is now being reclaimed to be highly personal, to be self-defined and evolving. Even our young generation have decided that they don't believe that their professions will define them. In fact, they don't believe that they will have one profession their entire lives, nor do they believe that their professions will define their trajectories in life. We are starting to believe and to understand what Albert Einstein asserted to us 3/4 of a century ago, that the pursuit of truth is more precious than its possession, that finding our own paths that are meaningful to ourselves is more important than one singular truth. But how do we pursue truth? What does that pursuit look like? Well, if you look back in time, if we look through history, what we see is that those who create progress, those who pursue, have not spent time accepting the commonly held truths around them. They have not accepted the truths that are handed down to them through authority, through religion or government or institution. Rather, they are the ones who understood that truth is a constant pursuit. Today, truth requires skeptics who will subvert authority, question it, in order to find what is next. And I'm not talking about shallow skepticism. I'm not talking about quick cynicism or shouting for attention. I'm talking about deep scientific inquiry. I'm talking about question-forward asking. I'm talking about collaborative fact-checking and finding. I'm talking about the kind of truth-seeking and skepticism that helps us get to a next place, rally around new ideas, and move forward together. There are many people, when we look throughout history, who have done this. They have used their skepticism to question authority and move the world forward. For example, one of them was a British doctor named John Snow. He broke from medical authority in 1854 during the Broad Street cholera epidemic. What he did was he had been studying germ theory, and he asked local authorities to take the handles off of the contaminated water pumps. And because he was so skeptical of the way that the disease was being managed, he now is known as the father of epidemiology. The heliocentric theory also broke from religious authority back in the day. At the time, it was a geodesic model, or a geocentric model, that was made, that was the kind of prevailing truth. That truth was one that was held by culture and was held by religion, especially the Christian religion, saying that the earth was a central place for God's creation. However, in 1543, Copernicus, as well as Galileo, and a number of other insightful founders and philosophers put forth some evidence behind the heliocentric theory, which then helped science as well as society move forward in understanding that the Earth is not, in fact, the center of the universe. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony actually also broke from governmental authority. So Susan B. Anthony was a key figure in the women's suffrage movement. She fought for women's rights throughout her life. She was arrested and tried for trying to vote. And after decades of trying and petitioning, today, the 19th Amendment in the United States Constitution allows women the right to vote. The Dadaist movement is the last one that I'll talk about. It broke from cultural authority. It did this by rejecting rationalism and embracing artistic freedom and individuality. It questioned what art is, and therefore helped us to find a new definition and a new truth around art. It is important for us today to understand that not only are other authorities being questioned, but brands' authorities are being questioned. Consumers today don't actually believe that brands are a singular authority, that they can tell them what to believe, how to live, or what to do or buy. In fact, authority is being subverted, and consumers are expecting more. We're seeing this play out in terms of brand trust. So today, when we look at brand trust, we see it eroding quite quickly. The Edelman's Trust Barometer says that there is a crisis of declining trust, and that 61% of people globally believe government and business make their lives harder and serve narrow interests. The PricewaterhouseCoopers survey has found that there is a 60-point gap in trust belief. And Qualtrics reports that we are at all-time lows in terms of consumer trust for brands and businesses since 2016 in the last decade. Consumers are also, beyond this, rebelling against brands that are trying to create top-down truths. So when Elon Musk came into X, formerly known as Twitter, he said that he wanted to create a new standard for freedom of speech. However, he didn't say how he was going to do that or give any research or methodology behind it. He just came in and he slashed moderation, he reinstated banned users, and he let anyone become verified for a price. Consumers didn't believe his motivations, and so they fled the site. So the site has lost millions of users, and the revenue has declined 40% year on year since. Gerber is a fantastic example of this. So Gerber once was royalty on the baby food shelf. Everyone believed that Gerber set the standard for what was healthy and safe for babies to eat. However, Gerber failed to understand and recognize that consumer sentiment was changing. They failed to understand that consumers were looking for organic, that they were looking for transparency, they were looking for solutions that fit their lives. So rather than evolve, what happened was they lost share, and they've actually depleted quite a bit. And today, there is far more room for brands like Yummy and Once Upon a Farm because of it. Another brand that has had a stumble, they say. Bumble, their campaign last year, people are now naming the Bumble Stumble. And what happened effectively was they went out with one singular authoritative narrative saying that celibacy is not the answer. But what they didn't do is they didn't consider why women were taking a step back from dating. There are so many different reasons to consider, and trying to create one top-down narrative for everyone, it just backfired for all of them. So rather than try to be an authority, today there's a role for brands as skeptics. Old truths are falling, new truths are rising. The ground that we stand on is unstable, and consumers need help. There's a role for brands in this, and there's a responsibility in it as well. So how can brands help to create overall stabilization by being skeptics? There are many ways that we can do this. One of them is to instigate. You instigate by boldly questioning the status quo. There are so many brands that are doing this already. One brand that I love who is doing this is e.l.f. Cosmetics. So e.l.f. has created a whole campaign. It's called So Many Dicks. They're questioning the makeup of corporate boardrooms with one singular insight, that is that there are more men named Dick on US corporate boards than entire minority groups. Their goal is, by 2027, to double the rate of women and diverse members added to boards. Another great brand doing the same thing, really, is Liquid Death. So Liquid Death is a fantastic brand. The brand started with a bold question. That question was, why does water have to be so boring? Then they didn't stop there. They kept questioning, well, can water be as cool and fun as beer? Every product that we see from Liquid Death, every ad that we see, has this same kind of fun, rebellious spirit about it. In this campaign, they showed and featured professionals like surgeons drinking on the job with water and poking fun at beer ads. Another way that we can be skeptics for consumers is to give voice, is really to represent the people and rally them around new rising beliefs and ideas. Freedom Mom is one brand that is doing this. This is a parent care brand. And they are questioning why taboo topics like postpartum recovery need to be struggled and endured quietly. Why is there no voice for people who are new parents having to deal with these kinds of difficulties? And so instead, what they've done is they've created a whole community, a place for these parents to discuss, to share unfiltered feelings and experiences so they don't feel quite so alone, and they know that there are others that are struggling along with them. In addition, Freedom Mom creates products that maybe others didn't have quite the same kind of courage to create. All Trails is a great example of a brand that is giving voice. So All Trails started as a brand, or started as an app that allowed users to give reviews of sites and trails. Since then, they've created a massive community of hikers, 70 million hikers who are on their platform, and since then they've become a platform for those hikers' voices. So today, All Trails protects public lands, it helps aid in search and rescue missions, and it helps to improve trail conditions across so many trails in the United States and Canada. The last method that I'll share with you is to reimagine, to radically reconsider what is possible. Nike did this with Nike Fly Ease. They reimagined the shoe. They listened to one singular voice. It was that of Matthew Walzer. So Matthew Walzer was a young man who was headed to college. He has cerebral palsy and had found independence in most areas of his life except for tying his shoes. It was one area that he just could not do it, frustratingly couldn't. And so he wrote into Nike, and Nike listened. Rather than deciding that this was a niche need, they reimagined what shoe design can look like. And in doing so, they gave Matthew Walzer his independence, and they also helped us to reimagine who performance wear is for. The last brand I'll talk about today is Live Near Friends. Live Near Friends is reimagining what life can be like, especially as adults, when it comes to our social lives. They ask the question, why do we have to serendipitously wind up living with near friends? Or can we plan for it? They're using real estate as a tool for community. And in doing so, they're reimagining all of our potential lives and helping us to see what the joys of living near friends might look like. So yes, the truth is eroding, but there is something on the rise, something that we can be a part of. And I would beg you today, as brands and representative of perspectives in our society, to please be deep skeptics. Instigate, give voice, reimagine. Create new grounds for us all to stand on, and help your brands also find a new power. My name is Chris Konya. Thank you for listening.